These are the absolute best picks you can make in every single round of your fantasy draft, because these are the players who actually matter this year and can help you win your leagues. It's not just trendy names or names that feel safe. We're trying to win leagues here. And if you're not familiar, I'm Sal Vetri, and for the past 8 years, I've been helping people win their fantasy leagues, and I plan to do the same for you with this video. And we'll start right at the top in round 1 of drafts. As you can see right here, this is round 1, the first 10 to 12 picks or so, and the guy that I think is the best pick. Now, let's get this straight, right? Obviously, round 1, if you have the number 1 overall pick, you take Ja'Marr Chase, Bijan, Saquon, whoever you feel like taking there. But if we're just talking from a value perspective, especially if you're like pick 7 or later, I'm targeting Christian McCaffrey. Yes, Christian McCaffrey, the same fella who last season ruined everybody as being the number 1 overall pick in most leagues, and then he doesn't end up playing in week 1, and then we don't end up seeing him until towards the end of the season, and he only plays 3 games before suffering a knee injury. Yeah, that guy. I think you should take him again in round 1. I get it. You might think I'm crazy, right? The 12 points per game in his 3 completed starts, 4 full games, but let's not get it twisted. If Christian McCaffrey is right this season, and as of right now he is, and based on like April he was 100% healthy, and now he's only had 4 more months since then, if that's the case, you're getting the number 1 overall player like you did in 2023 when he put up one of the best fantasy seasons, one of the 5 best fantasy seasons ever, of which he has 3, by the way, with 24.5 fantasy points per game. Yes, that's the guy that you're getting. Remember the guy who did this in 2023? Almost 1,500 rushing yards, over 500 receiving yards. That's 2,000 total yards. He had 21 total touchdowns. He broke 20 runs of 10 plus yards. What else did he do that season? Oh, 67 catches. He was a monster. And the craziest part is, it's not like Christian McCaffrey just did this in 2023 and we're trying to catch lightning in a bottle, like, oh, it was a one-time thing, a career year, it'll never happen again. Not at all, because if you see Dynasty Dad's tweet here on Twitter, make sure to follow him. He says Christian McCaffrey has 3 of the 5 highest fantasy running back seasons ever, right? 2023 we just talked about here when he had 391 points. Oh, 385 points the year before that. Oh, 2019, 471 fantasy points, right? Those are his last 3 seasons when he entered the year healthy, not coming off of an injury or dealing with an injury in camp. And as of right now, knock on wood, Christian McCaffrey is healthy. And not only is he fully healthy, as you can see in the team changes tracker, which is a part of my fantasy blueprint, if you want to check it out, link down below, you can see right here he has way less competition. Deebo Samuel, from not only like, a couple carries a game Deebo is getting, but also short area targets like screens and slants, quick short area targets. Jordan Mason, who might have been a threat this year to take some goal line carries or a couple more touches per game than pass running backs, those guys are gone. There's really no competition. I get it, Isaac Horrendo was impressive during his time last year with extended touches, but Isaac Horrendo, if we're talking about a healthy Christian McCaffrey, isn't going to be involved. It's just not going to be the case. McCaffrey will be one on the short list to lead all the players in the NFL at the running back position in snaps per game. And as I mentioned, we've already gotten these reports all training camp. He played in every single practice during OTA's training camp, in minicamp as well. 0 restrictions. And this report on 0 restrictions, as you can see right here from Nick Wagoneer over on ESPN, April 22nd is when McCaffrey had 0 restrictions. So you're talking about 4.5 more months to only get healthier, to only get more conditioned. You're seeing the clips coming out right now in training camp where McCaffrey looks good. Sure, if like in 3 weeks there's reports that he's injured again, then we can maybe not take him in round 1 at that point. But as of right now, we're not getting any of those reports. And as Ian Hartitz posted here, a very helpful tweet in terms of the easiest schedules this season. If we look at the 3rd, this is ranked in order of easiest for running backs. Number 1 is Arizona. You could say James Conner. Number 2 is the Saints, although a bad offense, Alvin Kamara. Number 3, San Francisco, easiest schedule for running backs. That's Christian McCaffrey, and what should once again be a good offense. Brock Purdy gets the extension. You still have Kyle Shanahan calling plays, and with Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, like that enough is good to be good. Wow, good to be good. Great analysis, Sal. It's still enough to be a very quality offense, and it will be. The 49ers are currently projected to be a top 5 scoring offense this year in terms of points per game based on Vegas odds. So yes, McCaffrey, like I love having a late round pick this year. If you end up with like the 9th pick, 10th pick, and you can land Christian McCaffrey, then you come back around and in round 2 of your fantasy draft, you take the best player that I believe is the best pick in round 2. When you combine not only the floor, but the upside of maybe being the number 1 overall player at his position. And that player's name is Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. Now here's the deal. We're doing this video in terms of the best pick per round. I'm not trying to build a fantasy team here, right? I'm just trying to identify who I believe right now is the best pick per round. Building a fantasy team is a completely different video, and we've done that in the past. So we're going to take this as an independent every single round in terms of who I think is the best. And if I'm looking for league winning upside, look no further than Devon Achane, who last season alone and in his first 2 years in the NFL, top 5 running back, top 6 running back, over 17 fantasy points per game. He's done it in completely different ways. By the way, last season when Tua was healthy, Achane averaged 22.6 fantasy points per game, number 1 amongst all running backs. And if you want to take it a step further and not just look at last year, but in his career over 2 years with Tua, he's played 22 games. Without Tua, there's been 6. In those 22 games with Tua, Achane averages 20 fantasy points between his receiving and his rushing yards. He's averaging 97 total yards per game. As you can see in those 6 games without Tua, just 57 total games, just 8 fantasy points. This is a guy who, if Tua is healthy, and the offense definitely relies on Tua getting the ball out quick, it's built around that. If Tua can avoid a concussion, which is a very scary thing, by the way, because of his concussion history, and I'm somebody who had a lot of concussions growing up. One concussion kept me out for 13 months. That's how bad and serious these things are. So don't let any fantasy analyst or NFL person out there tell you like, oh, he's recovered now. No, that's not how it works. A blow to the head can harm some things, but if Tua stays healthy, yes, Achane, just like we saw 2 years ago, can be a top 5 running back in fantasy when Tua played in all 17 games back in 2023. Now, here's the deal if we want to look at this. In terms of the competition, the biggest things here, of course, Raheem Mostert is gone. He wasn't much of a factor last year anyways. The backup running back will be Jalen Wright. But the big thing, Jonnu Smith, the tight end, according to the team changes tracker in the fantasy blueprint, he was traded to the Steelers, as you now know, which opens up 111 targets for this offense. That's going to help Jalen Waddle. Probably should help somewhat Tyreek Hill. He's going to see a lot of targets either way. But Jonnu was getting a lot of those targets in the short to middle parts of the field, sometimes on screens. And now, Devon Achane, he operates in that area. So maybe we see some of those targets go to Devon Achane, or at least make his target floor more stable. As you can see, Ryan Heath on Twitter, make sure to follow him. He says Jonnu and Devon Achane each finished top 15 in design targets last year. And now Jonnu Smith is gone. So as he says, Achane just might catch 50 screens and finish as the RB1 overall if Tua stays healthy this year. So yes, now no Jonnu Smith. Achane, who already led every running back very quietly last year in total receptions, might do it again. As I mentioned, the RB2 here is going to be Jalen Wright to start the year. They did draft Ollie Gordon in the later rounds, but it looks like Jalen Wright right now to start the year. Also an explosive running back in different ways, has the speed, has a little bit more size than Devon Achane, but let's not get it twisted. From a pass catching perspective, from an explosive run rate of 10 plus yards per carry, Devon Achane in his first 2 years in the NFL is one of the best running backs we've ever seen in terms of creating explosive plays. And now he added in that pass catching abilities as well last year. Yeah, that's scary. I almost malfunctioned there for a second, but Devon Achane goes as the 14th overall player. And it's very close, by the way, with Nico Collins, who goes 13th overall. He often goes in round 1, though. Like Malik Neighbors has been falling and Collins has been rising, so I thought that was a little bit of a cheat code there to say Nico Collins. So Devon Achane, favorite pick, although it's at the top of round 2 in round 2. But what about round 3? Because when you get to round 3, you start to get these elite quarterbacks come into play, maybe an elite tight end you're thinking about, but I'm staying at the running back position. And again, this is not a best overall draft strategy. This is the best pick per round. They're independent of each other. That's why it's going to be 3 running backs in a row, because it just so happens to be the best value in each round right now. So when we get into round 3, if I scroll down here a little bit, and this is where round 3 starts to kick off around pick 24, I think right there at the top of round 3. Sometimes he goes at the end of round 2 right now, but Chase Brown is the guy that I'm targeting. He often goes over 50% of the time right now in round 3 of fantasy drafts, and it's just hard not to like Chase Brown. We've been talking about him all off season. He should probably be like an early, like a top 15 overall pick in fantasy, but fantasy drafts are just loaded this year because of all the great young wide receivers. I mean, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Drake London, all these guys. Heck, even Nico Collins we just talked about. All those great young wide receivers are making all these other great running backs like a Chase Brown get pushed down the board to the 3rd round of drafts now, despite being the running back 3 overall in fantasy points per game, as you can see right here, the second half of last season. He ended up being the RB28 to start the season, splitting the backfield with Zach Moss. Second half of the season, when Moss goes down, RB3 in fantasy points per game. And during this time, Chase Brown averaged 24 touches, 116 yards per game, and 5.5 targets per game, while leading every single running back in the league with an 85% snap share. And if you took that like 9-game sample over the course of a full season, he would have had 402 touches, nearly 2,000 total yards, 81 catches, and 13 touchdowns. That's like Christian McCaffrey type production is what we saw out of Chase Brown to end last year. And now his biggest competition to start last season in Zach Moss, the veteran running back, has been released as he deals with his own injuries right now. In the competition that you're currently seeing there, the Bengals brought back Samaje Perine this offseason. Okay, he's a 30-year-old running back who is very somewhat one-dimensional. Hopefully he doesn't play in the 2-minute offense. I don't think he will. That was Chase Brown's role last year. And they draft Taj Brooks in the later rounds. I think Taj Brooks is honestly the running back, the RB2 in this backfield I'd want over Perine. Has a little bit more of an unknown upside as a rookie, but for the most part, this is Chase Brown's backfield. All the moves they've done this offseason, by not adding a serious running back in free agency, by not adding a serious competition in the draft in a loaded running back class, by cutting Zach Moss. They're saying we trust Chase Brown with their wallets and their moves. And I mean, they're also just saying it like verbally right now. Bengals offensive coordinator Dan Pitcher to start training camp basically had this to say. He ended up saying Chase Brown is going to be, by the end of the season, a household name. He's everything Austin Eckler was, and we all know who he is. He then also said to start training camp this quote as well. I mean, all he does was glazing, if if you will, Mr. Pause, Chase Brown. He said that Chase Brown will be one of the focal points of the offense this year. I mean, that really shouldn't shock anybody. One of the focal points. He was the second half of last year. Who were the focal points in this offense? Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown. But at least it's like a little bit more security. Like, yeah, he's in that group of players. And just like last year when he was dominating, he still has an MVP caliber quarterback in Joe Burrow. Just like last year when he was dominating, he doesn't have competition, and T. Higgins is back with the team. So it's T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. The offense is going to be the same. The defense, maybe from a pass rush perspective, adding Shamar Stewart gets a little bit better. For the most part, though, not going to be great. They're going to have to pass a lot to keep up in games. More checkdowns for Chase Brown. So yes, in round 3, I like Chase Brown a ton. As you can see right here, he is the 24th overall player off the board. But if you want to see exactly where Chase Brown goes, it goes higher than that. And my top 50 overall players, completely free to help you with your draft. You can check it out, link down below, or you can head to fantasyrankingsfree.com. That is fantasyrankingsfree.com. That will take you to this lovely page where you enter your email, and then I'll instantly send you the top 50 overall rankings. Just make sure to check your spam and promotional folder. Sometimes they get lost in there if you're not used to getting like Excel files or rankings sent to you. Other than that, though, it's going to be the top 50 overall, showing you the best and worst picks in every round and tiers for the first couple of rounds of your draft to make sure you dominate those. But if you are a serious fantasy player and you want the full top 250 rankings, all my drafting tools and in-season tools, that's why I built the Fantasy Blueprint. It's what I use in all my leagues, and over 10,000 people are currently using in their leagues. You can learn more about the Blueprint with the link in the description below, or you can head to jointheblueprint.com. All this information will basically tell you what you're getting, give you a little bit more information on the Blueprint, and then also you can see all the other referrals that you can see right here from a bunch of people putting their comments about how they won their league, they got to the championship in X amount of leagues and all that. You can read all those testimonials on there. And by the way, from the people who signed up last year, over 85% of them, almost 9 out of 10, are coming back this year, which I just think shows that the product is useful. It's helpful. They were like, yeah, this was good, I'm going to do it again. So if you want to check out the Blueprint and schmack around your friends this year, so they're like, how the heck did this guy get so good? Make sure to go to jointheblueprint.com, or you could use the link in the description below. Again, that's jointheblueprint.com. There are limited spots left for this year. Once they're gone, they're gone. All right, now in round 4 of fantasy drafts, there's only one obvious option in my opinion at this point, and it's this man right here who's just rising by the day. I wouldn't be shocked if by the time you're watching this, he starts to go in round 3. But as of this recording, Omarion Hampton, the Chargers rookie running back, first round pick, is still going in round 4 of drafts. And if we're talking about breakout rookies, obviously there's Ashton Jeanty, number 2, and right next to him is Omarion Hampton. And the beautiful thing is you don't have to spend a top 15, maybe even a first round pick on Hampton like you do with Ashton Jeanty. And let's not get it twisted. Hampton was a monster in college. I'm talking 1,500 yards in back-to-back seasons. Last year with his over 1,600 rushing yards, 17 touchdowns. If you talk about his receiving yards, he went for over 2,000 total yards last year. He then went to the NFL Combine and at over 220 pounds, NFL size, NFL production in college, he ends up running a strong 40 time as well. NFL speed, a very rare combination of all these tactics. And his film was amazing. And that's why the Chargers took him in the first round. And honestly, it's like the perfect situation for the guy right now. Because if you pull up the team changes page for Omarion Hampton, there's a reason why they spent the first round pick on him. He fell past where they actually had a grade. They probably had him as a top 15 overall player, and he fell into the 20s. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards are gone, so we're talking about 300 or so touches up for grabs since last year. They bring in Najee Harris, but this dude is still at this point right now, battling an eye injury that he had on the 4th of July from a firework. We're like 2 to 3 weeks into camp, and he really has, we don't even have concrete updates. It doesn't really seem good for Najee Harris. Okay, so we're getting to the point where it went from some veteran competition to not a lot, and I was going to say like, yeah, this offensive line looks good, and it still is a solid offensive line, but they did lose Rashawn Slater, probably the best piece on this entire offensive line, right up there with Joe Alt. These were probably the best, or up there as the best combination of tackle play in the NFL, and now they're not going to have that because recently, within the past, 7 to 10 days or so, Rashawn Slater ended up getting injured in training camp. He will miss the 2025 season, suffering to what is believed a torn patellar tendon. That's not great. You can see from my tweet right over here in terms of, this was like a recap, a thread I had on all the training camp news the past week. If you want to follow me over there, you can for these types of updates. But we're still getting an offense for Hampton led by Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman that's going to be run heavy. I mean, that's what they've done. You could see last year Justin Herbert threw a career low 29 times because this team was running the ball. And as I said, Najee Harris is still recovering from that eye injury, and even if he was to get healthy, we're not talking about like an extremely efficient running back. He only averaged 3.8 yards per carry last year, 47th in the NFL. If we're talking about him just having a 2% touchdown rate despite having 55 red zone touches last year, not even ranking top 30 in terms of yards per touch. Like, look, he was behind a good offensive line last year too, in a run first scheme that was a creative one under Arthur Smith, or as creative as you can be with that passing attack they had last year. Najee Harris, we know what he is. He's like an average running back, maybe slightly above that. Whereas Omarion Hampton coming out of college is a much more dynamic and explosive, I would say, player than Najee Harris was. His own offensive coordinator has already called him the total package, talking about his vision, his film, everything that he can do. So I think he's going to be a 3-down back. We know he can catch passes. We know he can work out in the red zone. Will he be out there in the 2-minute offense for pass protection? I think so, which is why in round 4 right now, the 43rd overall pick, I'm liking Omarion Hampton a ton right now. But what about once you start start to get to round 5, right? Because if we scroll down a little bit, right here with pick 49 overall, DJ Moore starts to go in round 4 or round 5. He's a solid option, but he's not the name that I'm picking, because all the way down here towards the end of round 5 and sometimes falling into round 6 is Tetairoa McMillan. Now, in most of your leagues, if you're in a competitive league, especially because these camper courts right now are glowing, Tetairoa McMillan, the first round pick, top 10 pick, by the way, overall for the Carolina Panthers, the receiver, he's my favorite pick in round 5. I mean, he's the rookie who's kind of getting lost in the sauce because of all the exciting running backs, because of Travis Hunter just being very, I would just say, interesting from a defense, offensive player standpoint. But McMillan is the guy who is disrespected, in my opinion, in the draft process. This is a stud alpha X outside receiver. 1,300 yards back-to-back years in college, including last year where he played the season mostly injured the entire time. A 31% target share is elite. This guy is 6'4". He's got NFL size and frame. He has NFL production, and now he lands in an offense that started to turn it around last year under Dave Canales in year 1, and they need an X receiver. You can check out Corey over on Twitter from Football Stock Exchange or Football Stock. You can check out what he said here, that right now, Tetairoa McMillan has the 5th highest wide receiver ranking in their prospect database. The only guys ranked higher than him ever, Malik Neighbors, who was a hit, Marvin Harrison, not a hit so far, but we know his pedigree, Jamar Chase, and CeeDee Lamb. Those are all hits, right? So these are the guys that are only ranked above Tetairoa McMillan in terms of prospect profile, at least for Corey in the Football Stock Exchange, which I trust their opinion. They're great guys. They're sharp guys. Yeah, that's a nice list to be on. We could also see from a film standpoint on what Matt Harmon, who watches all the tape for reception perception, says. You can see right here, against press coverage, 80th percentile, which is very good for Tetairoa McMillan. He was dominating press and zone coverage. He could work on his man, but he's mostly going to be seeing, anyways, maybe a little bit of press, but he's going to see a lot of zone, which he was good against as well in college. So this is a good situation. And he has a good play caller, and Dave Canales scheming things up to get him open. Maybe he moves into the slot at times as a big slot. We hope he gets put in motion. This is a guy who can break out in year 1 easily, because the opportunity will be there in this offense. Former first-round pick last year, Xavier Legette, dealt with injuries, never really broke out. They're saying he's having a good camp, but we'll end up seeing what happens there. Adam Thielen, who just never goes away. I think he's actually going to be involved, at least to start the year, if he can remain healthy, although he's like 34 years old. We're not going to expect him, especially downfield, to really be a big contributor. Jalen Colker is somebody who's getting a lot of praise entering year 2, but in terms of like who can earn 120 to 150 targets in this offense, I don't think anybody even comes close to Tetairoa McMillan in that capability, or in terms of who's the best or most likely to do that. So yeah, it might not be all rainbows right away. Maybe Bryce Young doesn't continue how good he was at the second half of last year. Maybe it takes a couple weeks to get things sorted out, but for the most part, by the time we're at like week 4, maybe even mid-season, I feel really good about McMillan. And it's not like he's a first or second round pick where he has to produce right away week 1 for you. If it takes a couple weeks, that's fine. He's a 5th round pick. So right now is the 64th, 65th actually overall player as of this recording. Sometimes he falls into round 6, even better for you. Odds are he's going to be a 5th round pick. That's where he normally goes. Tetairoa McMillan's appealing to me. But what are we going to do once we get into round 6, right? Because if we start to look here in round 6, there's some really appealing options. Caleb Johnson, a rookie running back. George Pickens is somebody that I love. But I'm going to go down and take the biggest value in my opinion, and that is Calvin Ridley, who last season, despite terrible quarterback play from Will Levis and Mason Rudolph, this fella Calvin Ridley still went for over 1,000 yards. Didn't care at all. Even though his quarterbacks, Mason Rudolph and Will Levis, ranked bottom 5 in basically every single passing category. You name it. Completions, pass attempts, passing rate as a quarterback as well. Yards. It doesn't matter. They were bottom 10 in all these categories. But Calvin Ridley said, I'm a veteran. That's fine. I'll try and make my work with it. He goes over 1,000 yards on just 64 catches, by the way. He earns 120 targets for the second straight season. He plays in every single game and doesn't miss time, showing his durability. But the problem that he ended up running into, right? We see the nice target share of 24%, over 7 targets per game, top 20 in the NFL. The problem he runs into is these bad quarterbacks just couldn't get the ball to him. Only 59% of his targets were catchable. So we're talking over 40% of his targets. So 2 out of every 5 targets that he's getting, it's pointless. They're over his head. They're nowhere close. They're thrown short, which ranked 97th in the NFL. I mean, this guy just had no chance on literally 2 out of 5 targets. So in a good game when Calvin Ridley is seeing 10 targets, like we're talking a great game, right? 4 of them, he doesn't even have a chance. Like he's never going to catch the ball because his quarterback is that bad. But this had nothing to do with Calvin Ridley's ability, of course, because as you can see, Matt Harmon, reception perception, he charted Calvin Ridley last year. And look at this. Success rate against press, 85th percentile, top 15% in the league for an older wide receiver with terrible quarterback play and terrible offense. Success rate against zone, also good. Success rate against man was fine enough, right? He was lining up everywhere and doing a lot of great things. And this was primarily as an outside receiver, as like a field stretcher, which is kind of out of line for him as more of a route running technician. But the good news, according to the team changes trackers, you can see right here, the quarterback should be an upgrade. I mean, I sure hope the Titans, sure hope their fan base, sure hopes that Cam Ward, #1 overall pick, will be better than Mason Rudolph and Will Levis, who is no longer with the team this year, or he's with the team, but he ended up getting injured and will miss the season. But if Cam Ward can just be a little bit better, and this guy was very good last year in college at Miami, especially when throwing downfield, which is where Calvin Ridley was being used a lot last season. If he could just be not even league average, Cam Ward, we're just talking not the bottom 3 quarterback situation last year that Ridley had. Let's just be 20th overall instead, and Ridley's going to be a breakout at his current ADP. Because, I mean, if we're trying to look at it right now, and we're just trying to be fair about this, I mean, the guy had 1,000 yards in the worst situation possible, and now he's going to get better pass protection, in my opinion, based on the offensive line upgrades this offseason. There's no threat if we look at it in terms of the competition right now. Where's your threat? This is the easiest competition for a veteran receiver who's produced in the past as recent as last year. The competition is not existent. We're talking this version of Tyler Lockett. Yeah, I'm not concerned. Van Jefferson has never contributed in the NFL. A rookie in Alec Imanor. A rookie in... Oh, whatever happened here? What is this? To remind me later. All right. A rookie in Shamir Deke, as you can see right here, right? These are not guys I'm threatened by. The biggest competition is Chig Okonkwo, a tight end who I think is actually a nice late round target. But if he's your biggest competition, a tight end who's never really done anything that fascinating in the NFL, Calvin Ridley could earn 150 targets this year. And this might be the latest in the draft. We're talking round 6, maybe round 7. Calvin Ridley goes 74th overall, the end of the 6th round most likely. This might be the latest in the draft that you can actually get a guy who can earn 150 targets this year. Just don't overthink this. And you also don't want to overthink the guy that I'm taking in round 7 of drafts, and I'm going right back to the wide receiver well, another wide receiver one on his team. Why not take Chris Olave here? I mean, why not take Chris Olave, a guy who like a year ago you had to pay, I don't know, a 2nd or a 3rd round fantasy pick for, and now not much has changed. Sure, the quarterback situation is ass. It wasn't that great last year, right? And Chris Olave still has the same target competition. He's still just as talented. He's coming off of a down year, but not because of his talent, because he got concussions. I mean, let's take a look at this right now. Chris Olave last year only averages 9.6 fantasy points per game because he leaves 2 games early, right, with the concussions, so that's going to skew his actual sample. But if you take out those games last year for Chris Olave, when he left games early, he averaged 17.2 fantasy points per game and had 4 games of over 80 yards, which means he was easily a top 20 receiver last year if you just take out the games where he left early because he was concussed and left early. And just like Tua and I mentioned, concussions are a real thing. They could easily happen again for Olave, a wide receiver who will be operating over the middle of the field at times, but if he can stay healthy like he did in 2023 when he went for over 1,100 yards in a bad offense, again, he had 138 targets, right, 87 catches. He had 1,000 yards the first 2 years of his career with not great offenses, never amazing quarterbacks. Like if Derek Carr, who's always playing hobbled, and like Jameis Winston are your best quarterbacks, yeah, not the best situation. But as you can see from Matt Harmon's tweet right here, he says Chris Olave is 10th in first downs per route run amongst wide receivers with at least 500 routes since he entered the NFL in 2022. He's also 11th in yards per route run and 13th in targets per route run. So what do these nerdy fantasy stats for all of you out there mean? In terms of first downs per route run and yards per route run, those are the 2 best metrics to just show not only how good a receiver is now, but predict their future success as well. And despite a down year last season, that's taken into account here, he's still ranked top 10 in first downs per route run and 11th in yards per route run. This is an efficient, talented receiver. Those 2 metrics alone, as well as the film, if you just go out there and watch it, prove that. And I get it, this quarterback situation is gross. We thought Tyler Shuck was going to be the clear-cut quarterback. He's not doing well in camp. Now Jake Haener is back in camp and he's getting starting reps. Like, this is a terrible quarterback situation. It might be 150 passing yards per game for this quarterback situation to start the year, but at least maybe half of those will go to Chris Olave. If we talk about the current competition for Chris Olave, it's the guys that you know. Rashid Shaheed, one of the most underrated wide receivers, in the NFL, in my opinion. But then you have these veterans in Cedric Wilson and Brandon Cooks. I'm not worried about any of those guys. Juwan Johnson at tight end, maybe in the red zone starts to become a threat, but overall not worried about him. It's basically the same competition that Chris Olave has had, like he had a couple of years ago when he had 138 targets in Rashid Shaheed. Although he was hurt that year, I'm not concerned by this. I think Shaheed himself is a nice late round target who goes in the double-digit rounds, but Chris Olave, again, people were spending a 2nd round, maybe a 3rd round at worst, pick on him last year, and the situation hasn't changed all that much. Still a bad offense, sure, slightly worse quarterback situation, but now you get to take him in round 7. Give me Chris Olave in round 7. That's where I want to be taking this guy right now. And once we start to get to round 8, this is where I'll start to target the tight end position, assuming you can get this one guy right here, David Njoku of the Cleveland Browns. That's the guy that I want to be taking in round 8 right now because he's by far the best available tight end at this point. I mean, let's not get it twisted. David Njoku, a monster athlete, and if you look at just what he's done recently, he's finished as a top 8 tight end in 3 straight seasons, and he's gotten better every season, including last year where he was a top 5 tight end, and now I don't have to spend like a 5th or a 6th round pick on him like other top 5 tight ends go this year. Instead, I get him in round 8, maybe round 9. Yeah, that feels good, and it also feels good his final 9 games last year when you take out a couple of games when he came back and he was getting ramped back up, dealt with some injuries. The dude averaged 15.3 fantasy points per game, almost 10 targets per game, which led all tight ends during that stretch, 9.9 per game, and 50 receiving yards per game. He was a solid tight end. He was top 5 tight end during this stretch, and if you want to date it back to what he ended up doing in his 2023 season where he had 123 targets, 882 receiving yards. This is when he was more healthy, only 11 games last year, 16 back in 2023. Oh yeah, that season he was third in tight end targets. He ended up scoring 6 touchdowns. 81 receptions for a tight end is crazy. And oh yeah, he played with Joe Flacco to end the 2023 season. Why is that important? Because Joe Flacco is currently the favorite to be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, at least to start this year. And towards the second half of the season last year with Joe Flacco, or in 2023 with Flacco as his quarterback, Njoku was averaging 18.2 fantasy points per game. Number 2 tight end in the NFL during that stretch. Crazy. And let's not forget, he's 6'4", 246 pounds. He's an absolute mismatch when it comes to size. And oh yeah, he's a freak athlete. I mean, watch any of his workout videos. He has some YouTube videos as well. The guy's like an absolute monster. He's on like the all-body team for the NFL in terms of freaks. 4.64 speed is insane for a 250-pound player. Elite burst. Like, we know how special this guy is as a talent. And every year he's only getting better. And I get it. The quarterback situation isn't great. It wasn't great last year. It wasn't great the year before that, right? And now he's going around 8 or 9, even later than he went last year as a 7th round pick. When I look at the competition, I mean, Elijah Moore is gone, who was a key contributor last year. They bring in Deontay Johnson, who might be able to do something this year, but we'll see, right? In terms of that, like, your biggest competition is Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman, who I think are interesting receivers, especially Tillman, who you can get in like round 14 of fantasy drafts, might actually be the underrated number 1 receiver as the X on this team. Jerry Jeudy's your biggest competition, even though Njoku last year, Jeudy goes as like a 5th or a 6th round pick. Njoku's going round later, even though he led this team in target share during his healthy games last year. Just give me Njoku instead. I'm not really concerned about this competition. So in round 8 of fantasy drafts, it's David Njoku for me, for sure. All right, now let's get to round 9, because I want to point out another receiver who goes way too late. And there's a lot of guys in this range, right? There's even quarterbacks. Justin Fields, Brock Purdy, great picks in round 9. Even Cam Scatterbu's in round 9. Like, all these guys, round 9's an awesome round. Khalil Shakur, the Bills' number 1 receiver in round 9. The Patriots and Drake May's number 1 receiver and Steph Diggs. You have Jaden Reed, who could easily be the number 1 receiver for the Packers. But I want to target Jacoby Myers, who in my opinion is the number 1 receiver for the Raiders. And I say receiver because we know Brock Bowers is there, but he's a tight end. And the reason I like Jacoby Myers is he's the most underappreciated player in maybe all of fantasy football right now. I mean, this is a guy who last season was a top 20 wide receiver, believe it or not, in fantasy points. He had a career year, over 14 fantasy points per game. And this guy was doing it with the cast of Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, Desmond Ridder, just terrible quarterbacks throwing him the ball. And despite that, he still cleared 1,000 yards. The dude caught 87 balls, quietly earned 129 targets last season, which is when 129 targets, believe it or not, was top 15 amongst all wide receivers. A 25% target share. Earned 28% of the team's red zone targets, which is an elite number despite competing with Brock Bowers, and for the first couple of weeks of the year competing with Davante Adams. And oh yeah, once Davante Adams left the team, he actually had a hamstring injury, phantom, and then he left the team and went to the Jets. After that, from like week 3 on, Jacoby Myers was averaging over 9 targets per game. He was borderline a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy during that stretch, which is absolutely crazy. Now we know Davante's not on the team this year. We also know that he got a quarterback upgrade, as you can see in the team changes tracker in the fantasy blueprint, in Geno Smith. So we're talking about a better quarterback. We're hoping for, although I don't think it'll be that much better, a better offensive line, probably won't be, but a better quarterback alone, and some more veteran head coaches, some adults in the room there as well, with Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly calling the offense. I think all these things help Jacoby Myers. In terms of some advanced stats that also help him, outside of the fact that he didn't have a drop on his 129 targets last year, which is just crazy, especially from the terrible situations he was put in by his quarterbacks. Last year, he ranked 3rd overall in catchable pass rate. So on his catchable throws, he caught 93% of them. 3rd overall in the NFL, just about a 1 percentage point behind being the leader in DJ Moore, who, by the way, DJ Moore had a lot of short targets last year. So did Jacoby Myers, but Myers quietly worked a lot more on the outside, which makes this even more impressive. He was catching balls not just 5 yards downfield, but 15 plus. And then when you talk about the competition this year, they added a couple of rookies in the draft who are getting nice reviews, Deontay Thornton and also Jack Bech in camp, but for the most part, no serious competition added here. It's just going to be Jacoby Myers and it's going to be Brock Bowers. But we should mention that the team also spent their 1st round pick, as you now know, on Ashton Genty, as you can see right here. He's going to see a lot of targets as well, but probably in the short to intermediate parts of the field, which normally in the past, like when Myers was on the Patriots, you might be like, oh, it's going to take a lot of Myers' targets away. No, he's operating more on the outside. If anything, that might take Brock Bowers' targets away. So in round 9 of fantasy drafts right now, I want Jacoby Myers. And by the way, before we get into the round 10 pick, these double-digit rounds where the sleepers are, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It just takes 2 seconds of your time, and it goes a long way. We're pushing towards 200,000 subscribers, and when you guys subscribe, it allows more people to see this content, which lets me only put out more content for you. We're now putting out 4 videos a week. We've never done that at this point before. I want to put even more out for you. Hit that subscribe button. Takes 2 seconds. Okay, back to round 10. As of right now, we haven't talked about any quarterbacks, although I do love, like I said, these round 9 quarterbacks in Justin Fields and Brock Purdy. Probably Brock Purdy the most right now. If you can land them, that's awesome. But in round 10, if you just wanted to wait a little bit longer, all the way here at the back of round 10, almost round 11, you get Drake May of the New England Patriots, who I just think might be the single best late round quarterback pick if we're talking round 10 or later in all of fantasy right now, and it might not even be close. Because Drake May took over as the Patriots starter in week 6 last year, and from that point on, he averaged 17.5 fantasy points per game and was on pace for 3,800 passing passing yards, 26 touchdowns, and 578 rushing yards. During this stretch, he was a top 12 fantasy quarterback. So that alone is a reason to be taking him in round 10, but then you factor in that he was doing this with a terrible offensive line, bad coaching, and like his best weapons last year were Demario Douglas, Kendrick Bourne, and Kayshon Boutte. Crazy. And the reason why Drake Maye was able to produce outside of just being so comfortable in the pocket, like this dude looked poised. It makes sense as the number 3 overall pick, but a big reason why he had the rushing upside. He ranked top 10 in rushing yards amongst quarterbacks despite not being the starter until week 6 with 32.4 per game. And this is a big 230-pound quarterback. He's already stated this offseason in training camp that when they get down to the goal line and red zone, he has to use his mobility more there. So we might see 5 or 6 rushing touchdowns as well. And this year, he's not going to have to worry about his best weapon being downfield like Kayshon Boutte because now he has Stefon Diggs. He has an adult in the room who will probably make the team in Matt Collins at the wide receiver position. They drafted Kyle Williams, who's a nice outside receiver and seems to be doing very well in training camp. So there's a world where this year he has a whole new staff or a whole new wide receiver room in Stefon Diggs, Kyle Williams, and then insert most likely out of the slot Demario Douglas. That's not bad, at least compared to what it was last year. And here's actually that quote of Drake Maye right here. He says, knowing when it's third down or it's near the end zone, I'm 6'5", 230 pounds. I got to go get something. I mean, this is Josh Allen type behavior right here. The YOLO ball at 230 pounds. Use that body. I don't want you to do it on 3rd and inches at midfield and risk an injury. But if we're talking you're around the red zone, especially the end zone, and you could pick up 1 touchdown every 2 or 3 weeks, we'll take that. So in round 10 of fantasy drafts, almost round 11, probably falls into round 11 for a lot of you, Drake Maye looks like an awesome option, and it's not even close. So there you go. There are 10 players that as of right now are my favorite picks in each round of your draft. Now don't forget to go and get that top 50 overall rankings. It's completely free. It's updated every week. It's linked down below, or you can head to fantasyrankingsfree.com. So these are my favorite picks in every round of the draft. But if you want to see the 7 players that I would bet my house on, that's how confident I am in them in fantasy this year, you can check out this recent video we just released. I think it's going to help you a ton. These are the guys you want to be getting on your team as well.